Well, I don't know what my ancestors went
Right.
through. I don't know what emotions I was born, what emotional palette I was born with. How do I figure that out? And then if it came from my ancestor, how the heck am I going to overcome that?
We learn from the physicists that energy can never be destroyed.
Yep.
It can only be transformed.
Yep.
Our bad feelings, please hear this, our painful feelings are an energy. And if we could destroy them by avoiding them or pretending they weren't there or numbing ourselves from them or watching a lot of Netflix or leaving relationship after relationship, we would all have transformed our pain by now.
Dr. Mindy here.
Your body is in a war zone.
Different parts of the brain get activated depending upon how stressed you are.
When you look at it from that inflammatory.
That's interesting. I mean, that has some merit to it for sure.
And you can't control everything.
I'd say.
And what about a woman who is not pregnant, but she's aiming?
Okay, well, let me just start by welcoming you to the Resetter podcast. We have some really in-depth discussions on this podcast, and I think you have something to offer us that we haven't talked yet. So I just want to start off by saying welcome. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I'm super excited to be here, so thanks for having me.
So here's the lens in which I look at everything through, and it's through a hormonal lens. And one of the things that I have come to realize is that the menopausal process has this massive hormonal change that is going on that is often gives women a exaggerated emotional response to stressors that didn't bother her in her 30s or her 20s. Those same stressors now are really, really agitating. In fact, I recently read that the number one symptom of menopause, everyone thinks it's hot flashes, but it's actually irritability. So I would love to start this conversation with, what is the difference between a thought and an emotion? Because what I found in my perimenopausal journey was the thoughts turned into really exaggerated emotions without all of those neurochemicals to soften it. My emotions were very heightened. So can you help us understand how a thought turns into emotion and what the difference is?
Yes, I'd like to kind of take the question and sort of field it in a different way. So I am a neuropsychologist, which means I'm a clinical psychologist with specialized expertise in the brain. So really all of my work, all of my brain research has focused on emotion. So what is emotion?
Right.
Emotion is quite literally energy.
Yeah.
I don't mean this metaphysically. I don't mean it metaphorically. I mean, the reason I can do my fMRI and EEG research is because emotions are neuroelectric zings in your brain that really govern all of the meaning in your life. So this is one of the biggest shifts that I want to bring to people. The meaning of your life rises on the energy of emotion. So I want you to think about any single thing in your life that has meaning. Are you a good person? Were you a good parent? Are you a good leader? Do you have enough money? Do you have enough I could give you a million of these questions. It depends. How do you feel about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So human meaning is constructed almost entirely in the energy of emotion. So we don't need to get too academic about this, but I think a phenomenal way that's really useful to think about emotion is emotion are like the Google Maps of your life.
Okay.
So we're all driving down the interstate of our lives and we get these neuroelectrical zings like, I should immediately leave this conversation. I'm driving out of my little Google Maps GPS is like, Julia, at the next intersection, immediately say no and hold a boundary. And what do? I behave in the exact opposite direction. Okay. So when I say that emotion is an energy, I again mean this quite neurobiologically. So what a lot of us are doing is we're getting these somatic signals, these neurophysiological signals that are intended to guide our lives in alignment with the highest truth of our energy. But then we are thinking and behaving in the exact opposite direction.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a few examples of this. I say, I want to hold a boundary. So I feel like I want to hold a boundary. But then when push comes to shove, I have a thought, or more importantly, I behave in a way that I disrespect my own boundary.
Right.
I have a feeling like I want to speak up. I'm really frustrated about something. I've been hurt about something. I have a feeling that I want to speak up. But what do? I keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
So in all of these moments, what's happening, and this is a really key point if we want to talk about energy and irritability and quality of life, in each of those moments, I have divided the energy of my emotion from the energy of my thinking and my behavior. Well, I
Okay.
always talk about there's an emotional physics to our life. There's an emotional math to it.
Okay.
If I continuously divide the energy of my emotion from the energy of the way that I'm thinking and behaving, the consequence is very logical. I start to feel depleted. I feel burnt out. I feel like nothing's working. I feel like my life is out of control.
Okay.
So the imperative to unite emotional energy with the way we're actually living in our lives is essential to feeling like we have powerful, resilient, meaningful lives.
Okay, so my neurochemical chemistry brain kicks in because I think, well, where does the emotion come from? So you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that it's energy, and so where does the energy come from? And I guess my brain goes to, like, let's use something like serotonin, for example. So if I am a 45-year-old woman and I'm losing estradiol, well, estradiol also stimulated serotonin. So now I'm losing serotonin. So I'm not feeling like as happy. There's a different emotional state there because of a neurochemical change. Would you just say that that's a different energy that I'm now feeling because my neurochemical system is different than it was in my younger years?
Well, so I think this is something that's really important to point out is that there's no, and I think this kind of blows people's mind, there's no single agreed upon definition for emotion
Wow.
among
Yeah.
scientists. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a fight, sometimes a friendly fight, sometimes a contentious fight in the field. But I call myself ruthlessly pragmatic. And so I'm always thinking, where does the rubber hit the road? Like, people have lives to live and they want their lives to feel good. So when
Right.
our lives don't feel good to us, we can get very abstract about it and we can do all the research. And I think this is profoundly powerful. It's why I'm a scientist. But we have to start thinking, if I'm in a moment in my life and I don't feel good, what can I do to improve function? And I
Right.
think what happens a lot of times to women is, for an entire lifetime, we have been denying the truth of our energy. We have been behaving and thinking in ways that do not align with the emotional energy. So the brain is the most extraordinary machine on the planet. Okay? It is the most extraordinary technology. And it sometimes frustrates me and sometimes it kind of humors me that people pay more attention to the intelligent operation of their cell phones or now chat GPT than they pay attention to the machinery of their brain and their nervous system.
Yeah.
Okay. So the brain is very exquisite. But when it comes to pain, so all of my work is really what I call the relationship between the brain, emotional pain, and emotional power.
Okay.
I think one of the most powerful things about my work is I take emotions, which are wildly complex,
Yes.
and I clarify them in a way that's extremely empowering.
Right.
So when it comes to pain, the parts of the brain that mediate physical and emotional pain, there are some overlapping components,
Okay.
which tells you the body registers distress the way the body's going to register distress. So if, for example, I go to put my hand on a hot stove and I burn my hand, I will immediately pull my hand away and I will never do that again. In neuropsychology, we call that one trial learning, meaning the imprint was so strong in my nervous system that I never have to go back and touch that stove again. Okay?
Okay.
What happens, though, in our experiences of emotional pain or emotional distress, and this is a very important point I want to make, I'm going to use the term emotional pain over and over and over in our conversation, but I
Okay.
need people to understand I'm talking about a continuum.
Okay.
Emotional pain is any emotional sensation that does not feel good to you. Irritability, frustration, inadequacy, irritation, rage, being mad, being pissed off, being lonely. The reason is I always say the brain is the most precious real estate on the planet. It's less than 3 pounds. The circuits in your brain that give rise to your bad feelings are the circuits in your brain that give rise to your bad feelings, right? You understand what I'm saying? So there's not like one part of the brain that controls trauma and another part of the brain that controls when you're in
Mm,
normal rush hour.
mm.
It's just
Right.
parts that control the stress. Okay.
Okay.
So if I get physical pain and I burn my hand on a hot stove, I'll never do that again. But when you think about your emotional pain, the ways you're irritated with the people in your life, the ways that you're frustrated, the ways that you feel like you've been neglected, every single one of them by definition is chronic.
Hmm. Okay. Like leftover from the past, like you keep carrying it through.
Well, it just keeps happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
So if you're say you're frustrated with your family, no one has ever come to me and been like, I've been frustrated with my family one day, one time in the year 2003.
Yeah.
It's like I'm continuously frustrated.
Yes.
Or people's relationship with social media. We're consistently triggered. So if we want an intelligent handling of emotions, regardless of where we are in terms of our human development, right? We've got to understand what's really happening with emotion.
Okay.
And for a lot of us, what's happening is we're replaying these chronic patterns of emotional pain over and over and over again. So unlike the stove where I touch the stove and never do it again, we're engaging in our lives emotionally in the same ways over and 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 expecting a different result.
And does that come from some initial emotion you had as a child? Like where does that come from?
So this is a fascinating conversation. Yes, it comes from, I mean, what's really profound is, yes, it absolutely comes from childhood coding. What we're starting to learn, and some of my work has been in gene by environment interactions. We're starting to see, I'm sure people have heard of epigenetics.
Yep.
We carry quite literally in our DNA our ancestors' pain.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard this before. And so explain how that is, because that seems so baffling to me.
I mean, it's a wild question that we're still really sitting with. But a great experiment was when, so if a mother is bearing an offspring, there's always a question about the maternal environment, right? So what was happening to the fetus in utero, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The fathers tend to be a cleaner cut because the fathers can just give their sperm and then the baby's not growing in that paternal environment. So with mice, which mice are surprisingly quite genetically similar to humans, what researchers do is they traumatize the male mice. I'm not a animal researcher, so
Right.
don't come
I was going to say, like,
yeah,
poor mouse.
I know. But what they found is when they take mice and they traumatize one sample of the males and don't traumatize another, and they have those babies, and then those babies become mothers. Are you with me still?
Yep. Yep.
One of the ways we measure, let's say, mouse emotional intelligence is by these kind of licking behaviors or the way they nurture their young. And you see statistically different behaviors more than a generation later based on, and the mice were all treated precisely the same environments, the same feeding, the same. So what they're starting to think is the traumatization of the male mice then gets passed down to the sperm, and then those sperm are then carried by these mothers, and then we see those offspring display different traits.
Yeah.
So this is I mean, when we say that we carry the pain of our ancestors, this is not abstract.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that it was a study done, I believe, on kin or children of Auschwitz survivors. that I had heard that there was a level of anxiety and stress that got passed down, and they started to see it in the second generation, I think. So I can understand it from that standpoint, which actually leads me to the question then, well, I don't know what my ancestors went
Right.
through. I don't know what emotions I was born, what emotional palette I was born with. How
Uh-huh.
do I figure that out? And then if it came from my ancestor, how the heck am I going to overcome that?
Totally. So I want to say something here, and I make this point in Energy Rising, which is that we learn from the physicists
Mm,
that energy can never be destroyed.
yep.
It can only be transformed.
Yep.
Our bad feelings, please hear this. Our painful feelings are an energy. And if we could destroy them by avoiding them or pretending they weren't
Mm,
there or numbing ourselves from them or watching a lot of Netflix or leaving relationship after relationship, we would all have transformed our pain by now. But
mhm.
plenty of us are sitting in our lives having done effort after effort after effort after effort. We're feeling very exhausted. And the levels of pain in our life, the levels of irritation and irritability and disconnection and fear and anxiety and stress are pretty similar. Why? Because pain cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed. Okay,
Okay.
well, how do I think about my brain? Because you're making a great point. It's like, well, I have no idea what happened to my grandparents and my own
Right.
parents. I'm like, so am I helpless? Absolutely not. But to understand this, we have got to understand what the brain really is.
Okay.
And the best way to think about the machinery of the brain is as a pattern detection machine. Okay?
Okay. Great.
So your brain is quite literally moving you through life going apple, 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 fill in the blank. The
Mm,
future is just a fill in the blank, right? It's a new day, it's a new person, it's a new job, it's a new opportunity, fill in the blank.
right.
So the brain is going to predict it was apple, 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 apple. It should be an apple again. Well, fine. It could have been a banana. It could have been a coffee cup. It could have been a dog, but okay, apple, fine, no problem. A lot of times, this is wildly adapted. This is why I'm sure we've all had this experience where we're driving home, we're listening to a podcast, or we're talking to somebody on the phone. We end up in our driveway. We're not quite sure how we got there, but
Yeah.
right? So this is that pattern detection ability of the brain moving us perfectly, unconsciously, automatically through life. Great. So the brain is not really going apple, 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 apple. What is the energy? What is the entity that your brain is really like? What is the apple in this analogy? It is emotional energy. It is patterned emotional energy.
Mm, mm,
If people get this, they will change their life.
okay.
So you have a core emotional pattern that you have held since childhood. I do the way I wrote Energy Rising is I wrote it into 8 neuroenergetic codes. So
Okay.
each chapter is a code and it's a blueprint for how to work with your emotional energy and your nervous system. One of the blueprints is what I'm talking about now, this kind of coding that we receive in childhood.
Okay.
So hopefully we have a sort of a good emotional pattern, and we also all have emotionally painful patterns. Well, I'm here to help people reform their pain. The things that are going well in your life, good. I'm
Keep
trying to
'em.
help take the bad stuff
Yeah.
and make those even better. So we all have a core emotional pattern, and you get to choose yours, but it's going to sound something like this. I'll give you a few examples. Things never work out for me. Things never work out for me. Things never work out for me. Or I can't get what I want. I can't get what I want. I can't get what I want. Or I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So what happens is, and again, remember the way I started this conversation, the entire meaning of your life rises on the energy of emotion.
Mm,
So I'm going through my life running a core emotional code that's unconscious until we do work like this and have conversations like these and read books like Energy Rising. And so I get into a new fill in the blank, a new house, a new year. I join a new workout program. I get a new partner, and I can situationally get a bump. This is why people usually feel all
mm,
hopeful in January, for example, but we know that before February, 85% of New Year's resolutions have failed.
Yep.
Why? Is it because people didn't really mean it? No. I believe people are very honest, and I believe them what they say. It's because this core emotional pattern is so powerful that we've got to understand how to work directly with it. So if I get into a new whatever, job, relationship, outfit, I might feel good momentarily, but I will always gravitate back to the core emotional pattern. So if I show up in rooms, new opportunities, new jobs, new days where I, at a fundamental, am running the emotional code, no one here likes me. I promise you, I will manifest a room where there are people in that room who do not like me.
Right. Yes.
Because the brain is superimposing meaning over reality. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If I look to the right now, it is a sunny day. I see beautiful trees and green grass. If I look to the left, I see a closet door and my Rorschachs. I have artwork hanging on my wall. Both scenarios are true. Let me tell you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my research, and then you can kind of jump in here. But when I say meaning is constructed by emotion, if I had 1,000,000 lifetimes to live, I would live it on this altar of human pain and human power, because the only way we change our lives is by understanding, regardless of where we are in development, adolescence or perimenopause or menopause, how to work with the energy of our emotions in that moment. So I am a human emotion researcher. We have a paradigm. It's called the FACES paradigm. So researchers all over the world use this paradigm.
Okay.
And the reason we all have to use the same paradigm is because, Mindy, if you're kind of showing people one thing and I'm showing people another thing and other people, then when we get back together and we have different results in our experiments, well, is it because maybe we just showed people different things? So everyone's using these same 4 faces in this FACES paradigm I'm about to explain.
Okay.
So we put people in these big scanners, or we hook them up to EEG electrodes, and we show them happy faces, angry face, sad face, neutral face. Now, the reason the scientists initially even included the neutral face was because you needed a baseline. In the scanner, you need to say, like, okay, I'm going to show you something neutral, and then when I show you something scary, we're going to measure brain activity so we can see the difference from baseline. Yes?
Okay. Yes.
So the neutral face was just supposed to be this placeholder, but this extremely fascinating thing started to happen. People started to have all different kinds of reactions to the neutral face. Some people said the neutral face was just neutral. It was boring, it was bland, it was neutral. And other people started to say, that face is not neutral. That face is scary. That face is threatening. That face is menacing. Who's right? Who cares? I am in the business of human power. If we want to influence ourselves and if we want to influence each other, we have got to meet ourselves in the truth of our emotion. So if the neutral face was just neutral, then everyone would have agreed. But people are having different reactions. Why? Because of the emotional coding that they're bringing to situation after situation. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So the way I interpreted what you just said was that because it was neutral, what the emotion you bring out is the one that, or the emotional energy you carry, and let's just say it's ancestral, like you said, it's ancestral, it reveals itself in that neutral face. So if somebody saw the neutral face and said it was neutral, and somebody said it was angry, it's really about your ancestral emotional energy that showed up in the neutrality.
100%. And, so I grew up in a home where there was a lot of volatility. There was addiction. And and there was a lot of wonderful things too. Again, like I always will say that when it comes to relationships and emotion, I don't want to get too far afield, but part of the pain of our relationships is the people who are hurting us aren't all bad. If they were just like a 2x4 in the face, we would just be like, that shit sucks. I'm out of here.
Yes.
So it's it's the people who we love the most because they're so wonderful are also the people who are causing excruciating pain in our life. So
Right.
I grew up in a home where there was a lot of volatility, there was a lot of rage. So I got really good at reading neutral faces and basically what we call emotionally monitoring. So the reason I became a psychologist is I have profound empathy. I'm very connected to people. I can read people really well. Well, part of that came through my pain. So to your point about a neutral face, I learned that neutral faces weren't neutral.
Right. Right.
Plenty of times I was waiting for the other shoe. I was waiting for all hell. Don't show me that neutral face. I'd much rather see an angry face, but don't come at me with that neutral shit because now I'm just waiting for the storm to come raging through. You see? So a lot of us who call ourselves empaths, who have a lot of deep emotional intelligence, we come to read emotion before maybe other people can see it overtly. And so neutrality is anything but.
Right. So, okay. So here, I have to ask this question because it's come up in many of the conversations here on this podcast, which is and this, I want to answer what we do with this ancestral emotional situation we've been given in a moment, but what happens when people are freezing their face with like Botox and fillers and things like that? And this is something I've noticed even in having conversations with people. Sometimes it's really hard to read people's emotions, that we have created a bit of a culture that has a very neutral face. And what I have found as somebody who's been interviewed by those people, or I'm interviewing those people or interacting with them, is that it's hard to read where they're at. And so what I'm thinking that you're going to say is that when the face is neutral like that, it's a mirror for you to see what your emotional, let's just say baggage, your energetic baggage is that you were born with and have been given, because there's a lot of frozen faces right now.
Well, and isn't that just such a commentary on our culture as a whole? It's like I always say the most powerful frequency on the planet is truth.
Right.
And another word, I believe in I'm at my core, I'm a talk therapist. Talking is my medicine, and I'm very, very good at my job. And we know neuroscientifically that the reason we think that talk therapy works isn't just because anecdotally it works. Like, we have powerful evidence that shows that language really changes the brain, right? So I think a lot about my word choice. I think another synonym for truth is reality.
Okay.
So in order for me to change my life, I have to push off against the truth of what is. And so I think a lot of people rage against aging. So even to your point about like perimenopause and menopause, and it's like, we've all been told that this very, very natural process of human evolution must be frozen in time.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So then I stunt my own, and by the way, I'm not making any commentary whatsoever about the way what they want to do with their body. I think more power to them.
Right. Right.
I'm talking about the emotion. So people go to do Botox and fillers and it empowers them and they feel, but I think there's this other question is like, one of the most I've done a ton of incredible research. I've really had a glorious career. I started my career at the White House. I worked on U.S. presidential campaigns. I did a lot of international humanitarian aid and international relief. And to be able to work with people in such sacred spaces, it's really been extraordinary. In one of the most extraordinary research projects of my life, I interviewed people who were dying about what it was like to live and what it was like to die. And one of the things that I carry with me so profoundly is like, do we trust the energy of life itself? And if we trust life itself, we've got to be more okay, not because we have to, like, you better get it together, but it's safe. It is safe to trust ourselves. It is safe to trust our bodies. It is safe to trust the unfolding. And I think there's a lot of stuff that comes up for us when our bodies start to change. Pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, right? And I think sometimes it's met with so much fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back to something I said about the brain. It's such a big piece of this. And I hope it gives people hope when they can really see it. So I said the brain is a pattern detector, right? Apple, 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 fill in the blank. There's really only one affective, one emotional state that the human brain can't tolerate.
Ooh, what's that?
If I'm angry, I know what to do about angry. Angry, 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 angry. If I'm sad, I don't feel good, but sad, sad, I know what to do with sadness. If I'm happy, 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 I know what to do with happiness. If I'm contemptuous, I know what to do. The only emotional state that the machinery of the brain cannot metabolize is the energy of confusion. Now, I don't care semantically. You can call it confusion. You can call it uncertainty. You can call it ambivalence. You can call it ambiguity. Neurologically, it's the same. It's the sensation of apple, apple, apple. What comes next? What comes next?
Right.
And so what will happen is just like the lungs are going to breathe, it's like inhale and just keep inhaling and just keep inhaling and just keep inhaling. At some point, the lungs are going to do what the lungs are going to do, meaning they're going to exhale. So your brain can tolerate, well, frankly, it's very, very brittle to uncertainty and confusion. We can expand it when we have powerful conversations like these. But what happens is the brain hits any moment of uncertainty, and it can only tolerate that blank space for so long before it's going to predict.
Yep. Yeah.
So this is why I'm sure we've all gotten, like just yesterday, my best friend, I told her something that I thought merited an immediate response, and she did not respond to me right away. And I was starting to get a little bit annoyed. And when I really kind of went into the annoyance, I was like, why didn't she? And I was like, oh, did she not think that I was? And as soon as I like kind of really gently reflected on myself, like, oh, I just feel a little bit sad, I was able to clean it up. But my point here is when we start to have an emotion that we don't like, it is worth asking ourselves, what was the uncertainty I told myself I was unwilling to tolerate?
Well, I just want to, just so I'm understanding this right, that what the biggest thing that I'm taking away, and I had a sense to this, but you've given me new language to understand this, is that when we're interacting with people, it's not our emotional response is not about what the other person did. It's about this ancestral emotional energy that I have been birthed with and have been patterning my whole life.
Yes,
So,
and I want to be really clear just because, like, I'm fundamentally a trauma. I treat trauma. I treat anxiety. You could have had a great childhood and then be traumatized. Like, it's not all ancestral, of course. I don't think
right.
we're saying that, but like, my point is we're shaped by all of these forces: our
Yeah.
childhood, our traumas. You know, I have patients who they've had infidelity. That's devastating. I
Yeah.
could have trusted people before my infidelity, and now I can't. So the
Right.
point is, it's all of these factors. But to your point, which I think is your core message, we often think it is the situation
Yes.
that creates emotion.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I am coming here with this big counterintuitive shift and saying, no, very often it is the emotion that creates the situation.
Ooh, that was good. That was
It
good.
is good.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so good is not because I'm saying it. It is good because it reconnects you with the power of your life. If it truly is the situation that causes my emotion, I am fucked.
It's true.
There's
It's
no
really
power
true.
there.
You're powerless. Yeah. So, one thing, and my audience knows this, I've been, in the last couple of years, deep into working on traumas in my life. I've done EMDR and I've done breath work and I've done psychedelic journeys. Like I've been really trying to work on my response.
What psychedelics have you used, if you feel comfortable disclosing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Psilocybin, MDMA, and 5-MeO DMT. And they were all done with therapists and in a very controlled environment.
And
So,
was one of them more profound for you than another? Or I know they all had their own
yeah,
gifts.
it's really hard to say. They've all been different. I mean, I feel like psilocybin really gave me an idea of create like a bigger vision that I wasn't able to see when I wasn't. And so being able to talk through some of those. And I also saw how interconnected everything was. MDMA, of course, is great at just bringing down the defenses and really pulling me into my heart so I could see things more objectively. And 5-MeO DMT was like seeing my ancestors, like it's from another world. So, but each one, what I did is I came out with a checklist of like, here are some traumas, some wounds, some things that showed up, and I took it to my therapist and was like, let's work on these. And I say all that to say that at 54 years old, I've really hit a point where I understand now what you're saying is that my emotional state is my responsibility. And so if somebody is triggering my emotions, it's a mirror for me to see, oh, isn't that interesting? Why is this? And I like how you're saying it. Why is this energy showing up? Because now I can work on it and I don't need the situation to change.
Totally.
And as I've been doing that for the last couple of years, what has shocked me is some of the most difficult relationships in my life are effortless now.
I got emotional when you said that. I felt this is what I want people to know is if we shift our relationship with our own emotions, our lives become expansive and possible, and we don't have to take a wrecking ball to them.
That's right. Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we do that without, some people listening are like, well, I'm not doing a psychedelic journey. I don't have the money to go into EMDR therapy. Like, how can we do this with this understanding that that our emotional health is within our own control?
Okay. So I want to go back to this thing about uncertainty or confusion. Let's go. Either one of those words is fine. The future is inherently unknowable. Okay. And it's unknowable in big ways and in lots of ways we can totally tolerate, and in a lot of ways that like we find impossible. Like we're just like, this is excruciating.
Right.
So what happens is, and I want to show people the mechanics of this. So what tends to happen, I work with a lot of kind of people who are high performing parents. Maybe they're even a stay-at-home mom, but they're just like giving all there's just a lot of labor, and I work with like leaders and I work with entrepreneurs. So people just like doing and doing and doing. So when I start to feel at my core uncertain, what that's going to do is it's going to create a sense of unsafety. Okay. So great. The brain is at its fundamental core. It's about ensuring safety. Mm-hmm. So what do I then do to create safety? Well, I start to say this uncertainty is making me uneasy. It's making me anxious. So I'm going to create certainty. Great. This seems like a very adaptive, logical strategy. Yep. So I then start to say I'm going to create certainty by doing a lot to the external environment. Now, in Energy Rising, I write about what I call the overs. And I think you're going to recognize some of them.
I feel like you're already talking about me, but go ahead.
Yeah, I feel so seen and not in a good way.
I do feel quite seen right now, but go for it.
So the overs are things like overthinking, overworking, overgiving, overanalyzing, overfunctioning, overrotating. Should I go overdoing? Should I go on and on? It's like there's a million of them.
Yeah.
So if I, for example, give to someone, that's very life-giving. It's very enjoyable. It's very pleasurable. But when I overgive, I am only doing that because the core energy is an impulse of fear. A lot of us love to work. But when we overwork, we're only doing that because we're afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of being found out, afraid of not, okay? So when I don't know how to metabolize uncertainty properly, I want to create certainty, that's fine, but I try to create certainty by engaging in the overs. So if I can work enough and give enough and function enough and think enough and analyze enough, then I will be safe. Are you with me? I think
absolutely. Yes.
Okay? Now listen to this. So my primary area of expertise is anxiety. Okay? I'm an anxiety researcher. The best definition I can give you for anxiety is a disturbed relationship with certainty. The best definition for anxiety is a disturbed relationship with certainty. In other words, the more I try to get out of uncertainty by demanding certainty, I start to obsessively chase certainty. The more anxious I become.
Interesting. Okay.
This is at its extreme. So anxiety is on a continuum. Everyone has mild to moderate anxiety, very normal. But if you start to get into pathological conditions, PTSD, OCD, generalized anxiety, social anxiety, panic, these are all anxiety disorders, but they're on a continuum.
Right.
The very thing that causes these things is actually a disturbed relationship with certainty. I'll show you. So there's a lot of variants of OCD. Let's take that as an example. I'm happy to use any disorder. One of the variants is checking. Okay. So I go and I think, is my stove on? I go check.
Mm.
And when I check externally, I do the checking behavior. I look at the stove. I get a little bit of relief. But then in a little while later, I feel that uncertainty in my body. I go back and I check again. I feel the uncertainty rise. I go back and I check again. Now, this certainty seeking is ruining. I have patients that cannot go to work because they are checking their stoves so much.
Mm. So how do you break that?
What you have to do is recognize first, and this is a very counterintuitive thing. If I had one word to describe all of my work, it would be either counterintuitive or opposite. If the brain is a pattern detection machine, apple, 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 and I want change in my life, I've got to be willing to say banana. Well, guess what? The first time I say banana, you think that's going to feel good? It's going to feel like, it's got to be apple.
Okay.
So I've got to first say, my real problem here is my inability to sit with uncertainty.
So it's like a root cause. It's the root cause of anxiety.
But here's the thing. What is the opposite of uncertainty? It sounds semantically like it should be certainty, which is why we're all out there trying to produce external hardware certainty. The opposite of uncertainty is not certainty. The opposite of uncertainty is trust.
I was just going to say it's faith. Yeah.
That's it.
So what are you trusting? What you're trusting that it's all going to work out. You're trusting that your highest good is always unfolding. Like it's when you get in the I would call it like the hypervigilant brain. I can definitely feel my brain go into that place often. And what you're saying is when that shows up, you have to just create a statement. If you're going to create a banana statement, it would be, it's all going to work out. I'm trusting that it's unfolding as it needs to unfold.
Yeah, that feels a little, I think that's beautiful. I would worry that that's a little too theoretical for
a little woo-woo.
No, I think that's the
give me something else to say. Yeah.
But I would say, tell me specifically where you're having stress. So I was a few minutes late to our conversation. And the reason I was a few minutes late to our conversation is I was running a coaching group. Mm-hmm. And one of the people in the coaching group said, I struggled this week because I went somewhere and I just kept changing my outfit and changing my outfit and changing my outfit. I kind of got in this loop where I just kept changing my outfit. So I was really stressed. And I said, well, what was the stress about? And they were like, I don't know. I just felt like I could not go out until I looked right. But everything I did, like it just didn't feel right. So I would say, what is the thing? So you see what's happening is this person is trying to seek certainty. Can you see what's happening in the nervous system?
Right.
That once I get the right outfit, it's going to feel certain like it's okay.
Right.
So she's outfit, and her anxiety is going up.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, well, tell me the thing that you think you cannot tolerate. Well, the thing I think I cannot tolerate is I think I cannot go out in the wrong outfit. If we want to expand our emotional power, and emotional power is our ability to accept our wholeness and to be able to trust ourselves and life itself. I've got to say, what are the ways I don't trust myself? Well, I don't trust myself to pick out an outfit. Well, I need to start building the muscle. This is an actual muscle of trusting my ability to pick an outfit. That's it. Not that I feel good in the outfit, because you see, people want to take the mountain in a single leap. If you try to take a mountain in a single leap, you will fail. Don't do that to yourself. So my job right now is to say, I'm going to trust that I'm going to pick an outfit, and that's it. I don't care if I feel good in it. I don't care if I feel anxious. I don't care if I feel like people are looking at me. Right now, my work is to show myself that I have the muscle memory to pick an outfit.
Right.
The way that we build, because I want to show people that this is an actual musculature. So
Yeah. So
one thing
if it sounds unfamiliar right now, it means that you got to practice it.
you got to practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it. Go.
And one of the exercises in energy rising is something I call hold your emotional shake. Okay. And one of the things I think is extraordinary about energy rising is it's very practical. It's like, how does the science, how do we actually show up in the science?
Right.
So we have a very strong analog with physical health. If I want to get more physical power, I go to the gym and I start to lift more weight or I start to run, and my body quite literally shakes. My muscle might start to tremble. My legs might start to quiver. My heart starts to race. I might start to sweat. And this is a really important point. No one in the history of getting more physically powerful has ever ran from the gym, fled, screaming, oh my God, I'm shaking, never to return to the gym ever again.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of us don't like that shaking or that sweating or that heart racing, but we find it satisfying because it is the clearest evidence that our physical system is getting stronger.
Yeah.
It is precisely the same on the emotional power side.
Okay.
If I go and I'm not used to liking the way I look, and I say, today I'm going to set a timer, and in 5 minutes, I'm going to pick an outfit and I'm going to go out. The first time I do that, I'm going to shake like hell.
Yeah.
And the shaking, I'm literally going to shake. My voice is going to tremble. My legs are going to shake. I might sweat. I might feel a little bit dizzy. If I shut it down there, it's just like me shutting it down and never going back to the gym. We change our nervous system through intensity and frequency. That's it.
Right.
That's the whole show. So if
Right.
I'm not willing to engage in the emotional resistance, I will never get emotionally stronger. I don't need to be hopeless about that. Because a lot of people will come to me and say, I can't change my life. You can change your life.
So what happens? Okay, so let's just walk a scenario through. Let's use the outfit idea. So the health thing is really interesting because that we should maybe use that as an example, because a lot of what we're seeing right now is science is being held up as like, well, the science says it this way, so now we're certain that that your health is supposed to be a certain way, and I think that that's a very difficult place to be in because the human body is way more complex than.
Amen.
There's so much we don't know, but now we've created a culture of people trying to find the certain path. How much protein should I eat? What exercise should I do? What menopausal HRT should I take? Like everybody's looking for these certain things.
And it's just obsessive certainty seeking. Can you see it again?
Yeah. I'm seeing this. And then what's happening is that we're like, oh, well, that person doesn't know, so then this person must know. And so as somebody who is leading a pattern of thought in the health world right now, I feel like it's getting us more and more unhealthy to be looking for these certain things.
Yes, because they are moving their locus of power to all these external experts. And by the way, a couple of things. First of all, when you take hard academic science, and you translate it to a CNN article, it's like, you eat one piece of chocolate a day, you will live 15 days longer. It's like, those of us who are like legitimate scientists, like we're not real. We wildly understand the nuance, right? And the other thing about science, and I want people to hear this because we are now held up on this pedestal. Faith in science, trust in science, faith and science, trust and science are sisters. There is no scientist in the world that can produce evidence unless they were first willing to act in faith. Every time we run an experiment, we got to get all this money for the NIH. We got to get our participants for the study. We're running these machines that cost thousands and thousands. We have to have faith. Always precedes evidence.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there has to be this renaissance, and I think it's an extraordinary time to be alive with all this, because I think the science is amazing. There's this rise of AI, but what is happening is there's a paradigm shift on the planet, and the intelligence of trust, the frequency of trust is now starting to answer back. Do you understand?
No, because go deeper there because.
Well, so I mean, we could have 4 more shows about this. But to your point, your people are outsourcing their power. Can I
Yes,
trust this
agreed.
expert? Can I trust this expert? Can I trust this expert? Well, what this is going to do to the brain invariably from a neuropsychological perspective is it's going to confuse you.
That's it. That's exactly what I thought. Yes.
Well,
And
then
now what do we do?
two paths out of confusion.
Yeah.
You either have to find more experts or you have to say, let me listen to myself like I have never listened to myself before, and let me tap fiercely into the energy of self-trust.
So, okay, so let's use fasting as an example because many of my listeners fast. And what I see is that when many people will go into these fasted states and they feel liberated, and other people go into just a short little fast and all the emotions and the relationship with food comes up. And so they're in that struggle. So I want to go back to that point where now they're in struggle and somebody comes along and says, "Oh, fasting doesn't work." A new study comes out. I'm sure you saw the one about 91% cardiovascular increase, which really wasn't a study at all from intermittent fasting. And now they're in this discomfort place and they see something or they see another shiny object that says, "Oh, wait, you're supposed to eat protein first thing in the morning." And so instead of sitting in the discomfort of how can I make this fasting work for me, they've now outsourced their belief system and they're like, oh, it's bad. See, I knew it was difficult. I knew it was bad. And I'm just using, there's a lot of examples we can use like that. But what I know about the human body is the human body has a rhythm to it and it's always trying to come back to homeostasis. And there's so many things that work so well for us. But when we're looking for this certainty, oftentimes we won't find it. And then we get lost in the science rhetoric. And we're in a moment like right now where people are like, well, tell me the scientific study on it. And they haven't really fully understood what even the scientific study is and how the human body works. So what do we do when we hit those places where I'm uncomfortable with this health change and yet I don't know where to turn now? I'm confused. So how do I not give up?
I mean, I totally feel your point, and it feels so demoralizing, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Look, I want you to hear the emotional energy. It's like a little girl pleading, like, I'm trying so hard. I'm trying.
Yes.
I'll do this. Okay, I'll do this. I'm trying. And then you like read this next study and you're like, oh my God, I can't drink water out of my faucet because I'm gonna get some kind of, it's just like can you feel the like just the energy just drop? Like,
yes.
No matter what so what's the frequency? No matter what I do, it's not enough. No matter what I do, it can't be safe enough. No matter how much okay? So what we've got to be willing to do is to face ourselves. Now, I know that this can sound wild, and this is why I love doing when I first released Energy Rising, there was all kinds of the book's been very well received. And so I've had to do all kinds of different media. And the hardest media for me to do actually is like talking to journalists to get like 3 sentences. I just want to blink my eyes 25 times. And I'm like, can we sit down for 4,000 hours? And they're like, no, answer the question. Right. So I love doing these podcasts because you can really expound upon things. Great. When someone says to me, okay, like this study, it's making me feel why? What at the core is like, it's making me feel like I don't know how to protect myself.
Right.
Okay, well, how are you trying to protect myself? Well, I'm trying to do all these external things. I'm trying to find the answer to my emotion. Can you see at the core, it's really about emotion?
Right.
This is a really important point. If you had a literal synonym for problems is emotional pain. If you found out you were going to die tomorrow, because we're all going to die, but you had no negative affect, no panic, no fear, no stress, you would have no problem. If you got fired from your job tomorrow, but you had no panic, no fear, no humiliation, you would have no problem. So when people say I'm running around like with a chicken with my head cut off, trying to find the perfect treatment, the perfect study, the perfect fountain of youth, okay, tell me what that makes you feel in your body. It makes me feel afraid. And so I need someone from the outside to tell me I am safe.
So So at the core, we don't trust ourselves. At the core, we don't trust ourselves.
And there's two things we have to trust. Is we've got to trust ourselves and we've got to trust God. And if you don't like the word God, then you say the energy of life itself.
Right.
That life itself is bigger than me. Yeah. And I am not living life, but life is living through me.
Yeah. So
and
good.
if I think that some other things, some other studies, I think the studies and the fasting is wonderful. Like, I've improved my own nutrition remarkably over the years, and I feel so much better for it.
Yeah.
But there is nothing on the planet that the final frontier, and this is a hill I will die on, the final frontier in our life is our own painful feelings.
And managing them, dealing with them, understanding them.
Because here's the thing. On the days when I feel good in my body, and the days when the people are listening to me, and the days when things are working, and the days when my husband is listening, and the days when my kid is cooperating.
Feel great.
It feels great. But the world around me is giving me my power.
Right.
The world around me is giving me my agreement and my safety and my permission.
Yeah.
My power, and this is why I think this is why I wrote Energy Rising, is in the moments when I say, who am I in the resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Who do I say I am in the confusion? Who do I say I am when you won't agree with me? One of the most powerful things we can do is decide that we're powerful enough to be misunderstood.
Oh, that was good. That was good. And so, if we bring it back to, we talked early on about women and, how we've, you kind of alluded to adapting the ways we've adapted, I'm just going to say, to the patriarchal world. What I am discovering in just working with so many women is that we've never asked ourselves, what do I want? We've never turned within and been like, what is my heart saying? And so, because we have been raised in a culture that has had us adapt to the culture. So when we come to the place we've come to in this conversation, where it's self-trust, where it's listening to your own heart, a lot of women would say, I can't hear anything. I don't know. That's a muscle I haven't used.
I mean, we've been so severed from our bodies. I'll tell you. So I had my first, this is like, I feel a little embarrassed, but I'm going to tell it because I think it needs to be said. I had my first child after I had my PhD. And I brought this cute little outfit for not the baby. I brought this cute little outfit for myself. I wanted to, I'm an emotion person. I wanted to feel like beautiful and held. I brought basically the skirt and this top. The baby came out. My stomach was still distended. I was wearing a catheter. I was wearing, we all had the ice pads on our vagina. I had no idea. It's embarrassing to say, but I thought you had the baby left you. I'm like, can you see that my intelligence around this was stunted at 5 years old? I thought the baby came out of my vagina and then my body just went like Gumby. So I feel like we're so severed from our body.
And purposely, just want to point that out.
So then when we're supposed to trust ourselves, and if you think about, and this is some of the stuff I talk about in Code 5, when we talk about the early childhood stuff, what happens to the brain in years early life, 0 through 3, is it's magnificent. 1 million neural connections are being formed every second. We're now starting to understand that learning begins in utero.
Right.
What's happening in the brain is really quite extraordinary. So at the most powerful moment of our lives, let's say 0 to 10, okay? We're getting all kinds of messages, some from very well-intentioned parents. Things like this: eat the broccoli. But I don't want to eat the broccoli. I don't like it. Eat it anyway. Go tell him that you're sorry. But I'm not sorry. If you're a good girl, go tell him you're sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Stand up. But I don't want to stand up. I just want to sit. So we're getting all of these messages from the most powerful people in our lives, who are our parents. And again, they're not doing anything even wrong. This is just how we are in human development. but we're getting message after message, some quite ostensibly innocuous, that we should sever ourselves from the very neurologic impulses that have been designed across 150 million years of evolution to be our neurologic Google Maps. Why would I trust my body when I'm getting signal after signal after signal that what I'm feeling, I'm too emotional, I'm too much, I need to sit down, I need to be quiet. My body doesn't want to be this thin. You should be this thin anyways.
Yeah.
My face wants to
So
wrinkle. Don't
good.
wrinkle your face. You see?
So good. Yeah. It's so, am 1,000% congruent with what you're saying, because what I see is that in that level of thinking, there is so much suffering for women, like so much, because we're trying to perform in ways we don't even realize it. And to your point, we're trying to slow down aging, and we don't even know that maybe on the other side of menopause is something amazing, and maybe things like wrinkles actually give emotional feedback to people. And like, there's so much we're missing in the context of health. And you just nailed it. And I think it's what I would love to see in my lifetime is I'd love to see women come back into connection with their bodies and into themselves.
Amen.
Yeah.
And how then I don't want to get too nuts here, because I know especially we're coming to the end, but you look at all these. So my life has really been about social justice. So my brother is significantly disabled. I came from a family with a lot of mental health struggles. This is why I did all the international humanitarian aid work. So I feel like biology is such a strong tool. Our bodies are such a strong tool for justice. How in the world can I respect other people's pain? How in the world can I respect the destruction we're doing to this planet?
Right.
Until I know how to sit with and respect my own body.
Oh, so well said. So well said. Yeah. Wow. Well, I can see that we do need to bring you back for many more conversations, but what I'm hoping people listening to this are gathering will, A, that you're in control of your own emotional destiny, and B, that it's going to take work. And thank you for writing books like yours and for coming on podcasts like mine so we can have this conversation, because I hit a point in my career where I was like, I'm not offering up one answer solutions anymore. It has to come back to us understanding our bodies as women. And it's not easy to teach something that's so multifaceted and has so much nuance to it. So I feel like you're on that same path doing that with emotions. So
I love connecting with you. And I feel like there's so many people like us.
Yes, agreed.
Like, the body has a natural intelligence. And one final point I want to make about the brain, the part of the brain that is thinking and evaluating and judging and weighing and assessing and analyzing, this part of the brain is the newest part of the brain. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. It's the reason we put rovers on Mars and like do calculus and all the things. But it's a little bit like letting your toddler govern your life. It's like the body has an intelligence. Like, the body knows how to breathe. The body knows how to move energy. The female body knows how to literally create life.
Yeah.
So it's like this tiny part of the brain, which, yes, it's extraordinary when we use it to do what it's supposed to do for it. But it's like when we use this part of the brain to assess every single thing about life and change, it's like letting the toddler run the show. So I guess the punchline here is like, it's okay to trust biology. It's okay to trust life itself. And it's okay to trust the fullness of ourselves in this. And when I talk about emotional power, my synonym for emotional power is wholeness.
Yeah.
That all of me belongs.
Yeah.
Not just the pretty parts, not just the nice parts, not just the parts that seem really put together. I take all of my energy.
Yeah. Yeah, so well said. So well said. Okay, well, I'm sure everybody's going to run out and get your book. I know that, diving deeper into this is going to be one of my fascinations. So thank you for this. Before I ask you the last question, how do people find you?
They can find me. Well, hopefully they'll pick up Energy Rising and let me know. People have been reading it and letting me know what they think about it. And it's just been such a beautiful, moving experience.
Yeah.
And then I'm on social media. So I'm at Dr. Julia DiGangi on Instagram, Dr. Julia DiGangi on LinkedIn, and I'm just Julia DiGangi on Facebook. And you can feel free to check out my newsletter, which is Dr. Julia DiGangi on Substack.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you for your work. And here's my last question. I always find this question so fascinating. It's the one that I've chosen to do for the year. And that is, what is health to you? Because we are all chasing something that we have different definitions of. So what would you say is health? When you know you're healthy, what is health to you?
For me, that one is the answer is very clear for me. Health is integration. It is, for me, am I integrated in the way that I am feeling with the way that I am behaving?
Yeah. Yeah.
The healthiest human being is a whole human being who knows how to make space for all of her parts.
The word that comes to mind when you say that is congruency with yourself. It's like, so one of my guests said health was, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual connecting together. Well, that's just lining things up. And what I heard is like, you being congruent with all your parts is phenomenal. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Agreed. And I hope everybody rushes out and gets your book and finds you on socials. And leave us comments and reviews, because it'll be really interesting to see what kind of questions we get. And then I want to bring you back. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
So much. Likewise.